Today we're going to start off with a bit of an Indian inspired meal. We've got a red lentil dhal with fresh spinach. And that's going to go with brown rice and some poppadoms, and we're also going to make a pumpkin salad. So as we're using brown rice today, that's going to be the longest part of our dish. I'm going to get that going straight away. Turn my pot on. So I've had some brown rice soaking. Whenever you're using rice or lentils, or most grains for that matter, it's always a good idea to soak them first. As long as you can, the better. It makes them a lot easier to digest and also starts to bring them alive. So I'll just strain this off here in the sink. It'll help cut down on the cooking time slightly as well. The brown rice still does take a while to cook. So we'll pop that into our pot. One cup of rice, we're going to use 2 cups of water. A pinch of sea salt, a little turn of pepper. Rice is one of those things, a lot of people tend to struggle to cook rice well, but it's actually quite simple. Most rices, as long as they're washed thoroughly, put them in the pot, bring them up to the boil, put the lid on, turn it down. Brown rice, they leave it for about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on which type of brown rice you've got. Any white rice or basmati rice is a lot quicker, 15 minutes, 20 minutes is all it takes. So I'll let that one come up to the boil. In the meantime, we'll get our dhal started. So we're using the red lentil dhal. So once again, I've soaked them here. And as you can see, you get quite a sort of cloudy water coming off that, so it's always a good idea to give them a good rinse as well. We'll strain these off. Just giving them a little extra rinse. And we'll get some water into the pot. And go the lentils. So lentils are quite an important part of a vegetarian diet. It's a really good source of protein. And we'll turn this one onto the heat. Some of our lentils, we're going to add 1 diced carrot. Two tomatoes, just remove the core from there. Indian cooking, we tend to put the spices in at the end. It was actually quite a foreign concept for me for quite a while. It took me a while to get used to it, and Western styled cooking in the way when you're taught, when you become a chef, is always you're putting your spices and flavours at the beginning. Indians, however, put them at the end and say it keeps the flavour fresher. And finally I've been converted after never quite been able to make Indian food taste like it's made by an Indian person, so slowly we're getting there step by step. So we're adding the spices at the end, which is a different concept to what a lot of us are used to. So we're going to bring this one to the boil first. Red lentils don't take a long time to cook. But basically the more you cook them, the thicker the dhal will become. It'll just slowly cook down. So as we can see, our rice here is starting to come up to the boil. And so at this point, just give it a gentle stir. Just make sure none of the grains are sticking on the bottom at all. And also check the side of your pot. Make sure nothing is up the side, that all the rice is sitting in the water. We'll pop the lid on that one. Won't turn it down just yet. I'll let it come up to quite a high boil first, and then we'll turn it down and simmer it so it's just ticking over for about 45 minutes. In the meantime, we'll get the spices prepared for the dhal. I've got here 1.5 teaspoons of cumin seeds, 1 teaspoon of coriander seeds, 1 teaspoon of mustard seeds. I'm just going to roughly grind these. Whole seeds are fine to use in the dhal, the cumin seeds and mustard seeds. Coriander seeds do need a bit of a grind. I find that just grinding them slightly helps them to release their flavour a little more. It's also a little easier for the body to process. If you ever have a colonic or colon hydrotherapy, often you'll see a lot of seeds come out, and that's because unless you actually bite down on a seed, it's going to come out the same way it went in. So it's good to give them a little breakdown first. Okay, so we've got our cumin seeds, coriander seeds, mustard seeds, and over here I've got about 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric and about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of garam masala. The turmeric's really fantastic spice. It gives that great yellow colour. The flavour's not so strong, but if you do put too much of it in, it can make things slightly bitter. And turmeric's also a really good antiseptic. If ever you cut your finger and you don't have anything to clean it with and you happen to have some turmeric, you can just put the cut into some turmeric and it'll stop the bleeding, and also works as an antiseptic. Supposedly also very good for the skin and the hair. Okay, so as you can see, our dhal has come up to the boil now. So I'm just turning it down, and whenever you bring any lentils or any legumes, cooking them, they're always going to release some froth, which is basically impurities coming off. So it's really important to take that off. It'll also cut down on your own gases coming out afterwards. It's just a way of keeping the food a little cleaner. So whilst these are going, we're going to start on preparing some poppadoms. So let's put a pan onto the heat. I'm using a heavy based pan here because I've got a gas element. Traditionally you'll find these will be deep fried, which isn't the best because they tend to soak up quite a lot of oil. You can also roast them in a hot oven. That'll come out quite well. But I find doing this way, they have a more drier effect. They stay quite crisp for a longer time, and you also don't have that high oil content. If you have an electric stove, you can just place a wire rack a couple of inches above it and just turn it from side to side directly on the heat, and that'll be quite a fast way of going it. So I'll just let that warm up slightly. So poppadoms are generally made from chickpea and urd dal mix. So there's not much in them really, and they're good because they have that gluten-free element to them, so they're quite a nice snack or accompaniment to a meal for those of you that don't do the gluten. So what happens when you're doing them like this, you'll see the white pockets will start to come up from underneath. And you just turn it from side to side basically a few times, just letting them slowly cook. They do take a little bit longer this way. If you're deep frying, you put them in and out, 30 seconds they're done. This way they take slightly longer because the heat is not quite so direct. If you are using a pan, just make sure you're using a heavy base pan, otherwise it becomes a little more difficult for the cooking process to be even. As you see, you get the bubbles coming up there. And anywhere you don't see bubbles, you can just lightly press down with your tongs and it should just puff up straight away, start to form bubbles. The only thing about doing it this way is you have to be a bit more cautious that the cooking is even. If there's any part that hasn't got that bubbly effect, it'll be a little bit raw and not the nicest to bite down onto. These are quite a nice accompaniment to a meal if you're having friends over. It's not the sort of thing most people have at home on a regular basis. So it gives that kind of authentic treat to the meal. So this one is just about ready. I'll get another one ready to go in as soon as I pop it out. Put the next one in. These are still soft for a few seconds when they come out, so you can quickly, if you're fast enough, make a little shape. I'm just doing a little cone, just holding it like that for a second. And this just adds to your presentation at the end. It's quite a simple effect. You find that goes hard and just stays in shape like that. I'll just put it on the plate for now for one moment. Quickly turn our other one over. Pressing down on the edges. Edges is always the more difficult part on cooking these, particularly in a pan, because all the heat source is coming just in the middle. The edges just take a little more work, just a bit of pushing down with the edge of your tongs. And next one in. Quickly shape that. You just need to hold it for a few seconds. It's a little warm on the fingers, but it's not something you need to do. You can also just keep them flat or any shape that you like. A little bit of colour on these is okay, it gives that sort of rustic appeal to it. Turn that pan down slightly. So depending on how many you're cooking for, generally 1 or 2 per person is enough. What I'll be doing with these ones, I'm making the cone shape so I can just have the rice starting to come out of the cone onto the plate. That's our last one ready. That's our poppadoms ready to go. We'll just pop those to one side for now. Remove the pan when using these heavy base pans. Just be careful because they do hold their heat for quite some time. Just place it somewhere where it's not going to burn or melt the bench, and also out of anyone else who's in the kitchen's way, so they're not going to pick it up and burn themselves. So rice is coming along nicely there. Whenever you're cooking rice, one of the secrets is never lift the lid until it's done. Just by looking, you can generally see there's still quite a bit of water left. As soon as you don't see a lot of water bubbling, then at that point basically you can turn it off and let it sit for about 15 minutes. So we'll make a start on our pumpkin salad. Here you can roast the pumpkin in the oven. I'm going to do it in the pan today. Either way is fine. We'll start off with a little bit of rice bran oil. Just turn that on to quite a low heat. Just while I quickly prepare the pumpkin. So as we're doing it in the pan, you don't want the pieces to be too big. About 1 centimetre square would be a maximum. One advantage of doing it in the pan is you do get a little bit of a caramelized effect on the pumpkin when you can give it, you have the control to give it a little bit of a color, whereas in the oven you have to keep stirring it to get that effect. And then with pumpkin, anytime you're cooking it for too long, there's that chance that it's going to break up and go a bit mushy. So we'll just chop this up. Pumpkin's one of my favourite vegetables because it's so diverse. You can use it in almost anything. It's really cheap, it's easy to grow in summertime, and it keeps quite well through the winter. A lot of nutritional value there too. It's a really great source of beta-carotene, as most orange vegetables are. You've got good vitamin C in there also. Added to most things, it has quite a natural sort of rich buttery flavour in a way. So it can also be used as a good substitute for things like butter or cream, where you're trying to add a richness into a dish. That's why pumpkin, you can even get away with using it in desserts. Only thing, growing them at home, you have to be careful with the space you give them. Pumpkins tend to go a little bit wild, spreading like wildfire, especially if you've got good soil or compost down there. Okay, so we'll turn the heat onto high now. Add a little touch of asphodel. Put our 2 teaspoons of cumin seeds in. And we'll go straight in with the pumpkin. So here, this won't need to be consistently stirred because you do want to get a little bit of caramelised effect, but just need to bear in mind that you still need to cook it evenly as well. So our dhal's coming away nicely now. Those lentils will be cooked, but we'll cook it down a little because we want to get a bit more of consistency in there, slightly thicker consistency than this one. The rice is almost ready to be turned off and leaving to be sit for 15 or so minutes, about another 5 minutes or so there. In the meantime, we'll start working on the dressing for the salad. I'm going to start off by juicing one of these fantastic juicy oranges. It's often the oranges that don't look the best on the outside that have the best juice on the inside. Better than those huge ones with waxy skins and almost no juice in. Okay, so in with our orange juice, put 1 teaspoon of tahini. Tahini is ground sesame paste. Used a lot in Middle Eastern food, but it has a fantastic taste and gives quite a creaminess to any dish. So we're going to put half an avocado. Avocado is one of my favourite things this time of year to be using. We have an abundance of them where we are in Taranaki. I managed to pick up a bag of 10 avocados for $3 New Zealand. So we're quite lucky here. These are the house avocados, which are slightly creamier than the other variety with the smooth skin, and they don't have these sort of coarse fibres in them that sometimes you get with the other variety. So I'm just going to take a fork, gently mash the avocado in with the juice. You can also do this in a blender if you've got a blender handy. Just by mashing it, you'll get a slightly more rustic texture to it. If you want the smooth creamy texture, just use a blender. Pumpkin a little stir and shake. So we'll turn the rice off now. We'll just leave that sitting. Rice, you need to leave it sit for at least 10 minutes, but even 20 minutes up to half an hour is okay as well. And with our dressing, a little bit of cracked pepper. Pinch of sea salt. Take a couple of sprigs of coriander. Just a small amount for this dressing will be fine. We'll just roughly chop this up. And that goes. Just making sure you're not forgetting about your pumpkin. You can see it's starting to get a little bit of nice colour going on there. Let's check the taste of our dressing there. Fantastic, so we'll put that to one side. We'll just pop the rice over to one side now and we'll start to get the spices ready for the dhal. Just taking a small pot, turn it on to the heat. Take a little bit of rice bran oil because it's able to hold the heat that we need. If you're fond of dairy products, you can use ghee. Ghee is quite a fantastic thing to fry the spices in and give that richness to your dish. So we're going to start with the whole seeds first that we've roughly ground. Always you want to wait until the oil or ghee is quite hot first. And in go the spices, see them sizzling straight away. And just as they start to crackle, we'll also add the turmeric, garam masala. You get a nice aromatic flavour coming up there. We'll turn that off the heat. It's important when you're cooking these spices not to go too long and too far, otherwise they'll take a bit of flavour. A little pinch of asafoetida. As you can see, just getting a little bit more of that foam coming up. So I'll just take that off first. If you're having trouble getting it, you just place the ladle down, just rotate it from the middle out. All the foam should go to the edge, and then you can just gently scoop it off. I almost forgot one important ingredient, just while the oil is still hot. It's our curry leaves. I've got 2 sprigs of curry leaves here. Just popping those into the oil. There's still enough heat left in that oil there. just to let them take on their flavour. They do need to be added into oil or ghee before you put them in, otherwise they'll lose their colour once you put them into the dhal, and you want to keep that nice vibrant green colour that you have. The pumpkin's coming along nicely there, and some great caramelised colour. And we'll now add the spices in to the dhal. Always good just to take a little bit of the dhal into the pot where the spices were, just so you can really get all the flavour out of there. And then pop that in. Turn the heat down a little lower there so it's not bubbling away. Consistency's looking quite good there. So pumpkin is almost done. So we'll add the nuts in at this point. If you've got pine nuts, they're quite great to use. Cashews are quite good. Today I'm going to use some almonds. Let's take a few almonds out on the chopping board. These can be roughly chopped. Try not to let them fly everywhere. Get some whole ones in there, that's fine too. And into the pan they go. We'll prepare a couple of tomatoes to go with that salad. Removing the core. Getting some great colour now coming on the pumpkin. Tomatoes we'll just take into wedges. So this is a warm sort of salad, so you can cook the pumpkin slightly earlier. You don't want it to be cold, it should be warm, but also not piping hot too. So that's looking great. Now I'll give it a quick seasoning. Some cracked pepper. Touch of sea salt. Okay, so the pumpkin is basically 90% done now. So I'm just going to cover it with a lid. If you need to, if it's looking a little dry, just add a couple of tablespoons of water and that'll just help to steam it through just to finish it off. So I've just turned that right down now, and I'll turn it off in a moment and just let it sit there and soak up. Dhal's looking good also now. I'll add the grated ginger in. I always like to put the ginger in close to the end just so it keeps that sort of zesty flavour. One of ginger's great properties is that it's excellent for digestion. By adding at the end, it's sort of keeping its nutrient level quite strong. So just grate that, then give it a quick chop. Into the pot it goes. You can add as little or as much as you like. Ginger is quite strong. I quite like that ginger flavour, so I've used about a tablespoon, but if you find that's too much, then just cut it down to about half. We'll also get some coriander chopped. Use a little on top of the salad and also some in the dhal. Coriander, if you ever have nice big bunches like this, the way it'll keep the best is if you put it in a bowl with a little bit of water at the bottom for the roots, and then cover the leaves, the top, with just a wet paper towel. I find that's quite a nice way of keeping the most out of it, keeping it alive for as long as you can. Let's put a little bit to the side there. We'll chop this bunch up. Just squeeze it tight into a ball and then give it a chop, keeping the fingers tucked under. Coriander, it's again one of those things you can use your discretion with, how much you like it. If you're not so fond of it, it does add that lovely freshness to the dhal. We always put it in right at the very end. So I'll turn the pumpkin right off now. Get a couple of plates ready. So spinach, we're adding some to the dhal, most of which I'll pop in now. I'll turn the heat off. Spinach, always good to put in at the very end. It'll just naturally wilt down and it gives that sort of softness to the texture of the dhal. As you can see, I'm putting quite a lot in, filling the pot, but that's all going to come down to nothing. Rest of which we'll just scatter around the plate for our salad. We can just gently stir that spinach through. Same time, I'll pop the chopped coriander in. And just stir that all through. As you can see, that spinach wilts down really quickly. You don't want to put the spinach in too early, you're going to lose the lovely green colour, you're going to lose a lot of the nutrients. Just let it break itself down right at the end. Give a little pinch of sea salt. Let's check our flavour on this one. Fantastic. The fresh ginger and the coriander at the end gives that excellent bite to it. So, looking at our rice. Whenever you've taken rice off, it's always a good idea just to fluff it lightly, just to loosen the grains. Brown rice is generally quite straightforward. It doesn't tend to stick or become too gluggy at all there. So, just sit that there for one moment. Move everything to the side here. We'll take one of our poppadoms and we'll just scoop a little bit of rice into there. Not so it's full, it's more just for effect, and if you fill it up too much then the poppadom will actually go a bit soggy. As long as you're serving it immediately, that's totally fine. Spinach Dahl. Spoon some of that onto the plate. So we have nice colours there with the carrot holding its shape, spinach wilted down nicely, and a little bit of red of the tomato in there also. Those lovely curry leaves. Give that a couple of sprigs of coriander just for a little garnish. Tidy up that plate slightly. There we have nice brown rice inside a poppet with the spinach and red lentil dhal. Now salad. Pumpkin's ready to go. Just scatter the pieces around on top of the spinach. Being a warm salad, it's totally fine if that spinach starts to wilt slightly. The almonds in there also combine quite nicely with the pumpkin. Few pieces of tomato around there with that one. Once again, you've got those nice colours of red, orange, green. Top this with our dressing. You can just scatter it around. This is one of those sort of rustic salads. just break off a few coriander leaves to go on top. And we have a nice salad to accompany our meal there. Got our warm pumpkin and spinach salad with some fresh tomato, avocado, orange and tahini dressing. Fantastic meal. Enjoy.